And also, don't create any content that would violate or go against YouTube's policies. Understood? I'm dying. I know that now. The doctors have told me. My body has told me. And somewhere deep in the stillness of the night, the universe itself seems to be whispering it to me. 2 cancers. Rare ones. The kind that don't bargain and don't say sorry. I have maybe weeks left, perhaps even less. And I find myself lying here in this hospital bed, staring at the ceiling tiles, counting all the little flaws in the plaster, the way a physicist counts everything, not out of obsession, but out of love. Because even a ceiling tile, if you look at it long enough and honestly enough, becomes something extraordinary. You see, most men in my position reach for a Bible. Some reach for a bottle. Some call their lawyers. I reach for a question. That's always been both my burden and my greatest delight. Because here I am, right at the edge of everything I've ever known, standing at the threshold between life and whatever lies beyond. And instead of being afraid, I am curious. Unbearably, almost embarrassingly curious. About what comes next. About what all of this, the atoms, the stars, the laughter, the grief, the 70 years of fumbling my way across this magnificent planet trying to make sense of it, what all of it truly means. And here's the question that has shadowed me my entire life, the one I dodged in public, tiptoed around in lectures, gave half-hearted answers to in interviews, and then quickly steered away from. The question that I now, with very little time left and absolutely nothing to lose, am finally ready to face honestly. Does God exist? Not the God of Sunday sermons. Not the God trotted out in political speeches. But something real. Something that might actually matter once the lights go out. Sit with me for a while. I want to tell you what I honestly think. Now, before I go any further, you might ask, why should you listen to me about God? I'm a physicist. I spend my life thinking about quarks and photons and the quantum behavior of electrons. What could I possibly know about the divine? And that's exactly the right question to ask. You should always question why you should listen to anyone about anything at all. That instinct, that beautiful, skeptical, demanding instinct, is the most valuable thing a human mind can ever cultivate. It's worth far more than any answer I could ever give you. So good. Keep it sharp. But here's why I think this particular conversation might be worth your time. I have spent my entire adult life doing one thing, and doing it as honestly as I possibly could, trying to understand how reality actually works. Not how we like it to work. Not how it will be convenient for it to work. How it truly works. Beneath all the stories we tell ourselves about it. I worked on the atomic bomb at Los Alamos when I was barely old enough to properly shave, surrounded by some of the greatest minds of the 20th century, and I witnessed what genuine, tested, verified knowledge could unleash upon the world. I developed a way of drawing diagrams that ended up describing how light and matter interact at the deepest level we've ever probed. I sat on the commission investigating the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster, and using nothing more than a bit of rubber and a glass of ice water, I showed how an entire institution can fool itself when it's more afraid of bad news and committed to the truth. I've been wrong many times. Spectacularly, humiliatingly wrong. And I've learned that being wrong, genuinely, demonstrably wrong, isn't a defeat. It's the fuel that drives understanding. So when I talk to you about God, I'm not bringing you theology. I'm not bringing you inherited beliefs, tradition, or comforting platitudes. I'm bringing you the only thing I've ever placed my full trust in, honest inquiry, unflinching honesty, the kind that doesn't look away. Not here, not now, not even about this. So let's ask the question properly, because most people ask it the wrong way. They ask, does God exist? And right away they conjure up a very specific image, a bearded figure seated on a throne, a cosmic judge keeping score of sins and virtues, a divine architect who sketched out the universe's blueprints one celestial Monday morning, then stepped back to watch the chaos unfold. But that framing, that very particular picture, is already doing enormous harm to the question before it's even begun. It's like asking, is there something in that room? And only bothering to look for elephants. You've already decided what you're searching for. And in doing so, you blinded yourself to everything else. The real question, the honest question, the one that keeps me awake on nights when the chemotherapy hasn't left me too exhausted, is something far larger and far stranger. Is there something more to this universe than just the physical? Is there a depth to reality that science, even at its most triumphant, simply can't fully reach? Is there something it's like to be the universe? Not just particles, forces, and laws, but something that feels, something that means, something that perhaps even cares. Now, I want to be careful here. I'm not about to tell you I've had some vision. I'm not about to give you a deathbed conversion story. I'm constitutionally incapable of pretending to believe something I don't. And I certainly won't start now just because time is running short. But I'm also, and this may surprise you, not about to insist that the universe is merely a cold, indifferent machine grinding along without purpose or meaning, or that when you die, you simply stop, and that's the whole story. End of discussion. Nothing more to it. Because a lifetime spent looking closely at reality has taught me something important. Reality is far stranger than either of those simplistic stories. The universe doesn't behave like some simple, clunky machine, and it certainly doesn't behave like something we fully figured out. There is something here, something extraordinary, something that every time I've drawn close to it, whether in equations in a lab or simply watching sunlight spill through a window, has filled me with what I can only call reverence. I don't know what to call it, but I refuse to pretend it isn't there. Here is the answer you probably weren't expecting from me. I don't know. 3 words, the most honest 3 words in the English language, and 3 words that almost no one, scientist or priest, believer or atheist, is truly willing to say with complete sincerity. Everyone wants to have arrived. Everyone craves the comfort of a conclusion. The atheist wants the clean, tidy certainty that there's nothing beyond the physical. The believer wants the warm reassurance that there is. But both, in their certainty, have stopped looking. I never stopped looking. And looking honestly means learning to live inside the question, rather than settling down in some answer. But my I don't know is not the same as a shrug. It's not the I don't know of indifference. It's not the I don't know of someone who's never given it any thought. It's the I don't know of someone who has spent 70 years pressing his face up against the glass of reality as hard as he possibly could, and has discovered that the glass goes far deeper than he ever imagined, that there are layers upon layers, mysteries upon mysteries, and that the universe, at every scale we examine it, keeps revealing something that feels almost impossibly, breathtakingly, improbably elegant. When I was a young man, I thought science would eventually close all the big questions. Give it enough time, enough ingenuity, enough particle accelerators, and we'd have a complete picture, a final theory, a full account of everything. I no longer believe that, not because science has failed. Science has succeeded far beyond anything our ancestors could have dreamed of, but because every door science opens reveals 3 more waiting behind it. Every answer gives rise to 10 richer questions. The realm of the unknown hasn't shrunk over the course of my lifetime. It has grown. And what lies within that ever-expanding unknown? What hides in the gaps between our equations? In the silence just beyond what we can measure and verify? I honestly can't tell you. But what I can tell you is this. I'm not afraid of that unknown. I find it beautiful. The fact that the universe holds far more than I can ever know doesn't diminish my sense of wonder. It's the very reason for it. If that counts as a kind of faith, then perhaps, without ever meaning to, I've ended up a man of faith after all. Just not the kind anyone would have expected. Let me tell you a bit about how I approach big questions. Because method matters a great deal. I had a friend, he's been gone for some years now, who used to say that the strength of an idea is measured not by how well you defend it, but by how hard you try to break it. Not by how eloquently it's argued or how many people agree, but by how relentlessly you test it, how many attacks you throw at it, how mercilessly you push against it. If it can withstand all of that, then maybe, just maybe, you're on to something. That's what I mean by a robust idea. A robust idea is one that can endure not only friendly questions, but full-on assaults. One that can stand up to cold logic, inconvenient evidence, and the most hostile scrutiny, and still hold. So let's apply that to the question of God, or more precisely, to whether there's anything beyond the purely physical. First strike, the scientific one. Everything we've observed in nature has a physical explanation. Biology is explained by chemistry. Chemistry is explained by physics. And while we don't yet have a single unified theory, the track record of scientific explanation has been so staggeringly successful that it's perfectly reasonable to bet the remaining gaps will one day be filled. So why introduce anything beyond the physical? Fair enough. That's a serious challenge, and I don't intend to dodge it. But here's the counterstrike, and it's just as serious. Science tells us how things happen. It has never, not even once, offered an answer to why they happen at all. Why is there something rather than nothing? Why do the laws of physics take the particular form they do? Why is there a universe in the first place? And why does it happen to contain beings capable of asking that question? These aren't just gaps waiting for better instruments. They're logical prerequisites for science itself to even exist. Questions that science, by its very nature, simply can't answer from within. Second strike, consciousness. Every subjective experience you've ever had. The particular ache of grief, the taste of cold water on a sweltering day, the unmistakable glow of autumn light in the late afternoon. None of that appears anywhere in our equations. We can identify the neural correlates of those experiences, but we can't explain why those physical processes should be accompanied by any experience at all. That's the so-called hard problem of consciousness, and it remains one of the most glaring, unresolved puzzles in all of science. If matter alone is enough to account for reality, then why is there something it's like to be alive? I have yet to hear a truly satisfying answer to that, and I've been listening very carefully. Now, let me say something about religion, something I want to get right, because this is where I've been most often misunderstood. People often assume that because I'm a scientist, I'm automatically hostile to religion, or that I think religious people are naive, clinging to fairy tales because they can't face a cold universe. That's not what I believe. And it's certainly not what decades of honest observation have shown me. What I believe is far more nuanced, more honest, I think, than either the religious fundamentalist or the militant atheist will be entirely comfortable with. At its deepest, religion is a sincere attempt to wrestle with the most important things of all: meaning, morality, the mystery of existence, the staggering reality that we are conscious creatures who know we will die. These are not trivial matters. They are the central questions of human life. And just because religious traditions have sometimes fallen short, offering harmful ideas or imperfect answers, doesn't mean those questions themselves don't matter profoundly. Where I differ from many religious traditions isn't over the questions. The questions are magnificent. It's over how they go about claiming the answers. When a religion declares, "This is a truth, and you must not question it," it has abandoned the very tool that makes it possible for us to tell truth from error. That tool is doubt. That tool is testing. That tool is the humble willingness to admit we might be wrong. A faith that can't withstand honest questioning simply isn't a faith worth holding, but a faith that welcomes questioning. One that says, "Bring me your hardest doubts. Let's explore them together." That's something I can deeply respect. And in spirit, if not in doctrine, that's remarkably close to what science itself is all about. And science, for its part, would do well to approach its own limits with a bit more humility than it sometimes does. Science is our most powerful way of understanding the physical world, but it is not a complete philosophy for living. Many years ago, I was alone out in the high desert of New Mexico, perched on a rock as the sun began to set, and the sky unfolded into a sequence of colors I simply don't have the words to describe properly. It wasn't just beautiful. It was something more than beautiful. It pressed against my chest from the inside, making me feel at once incredibly small and, strangely enough, deeply significant. Physicists aren't really supposed to talk like this. We're expected to be cool, analytical, and unmoved by sentiment. But that's never been who I am, and I won't put on that detached act now. Not at the end. The truth is, I have spent my entire life deeply moved. Moved by equations. Moved by the way electrons behave. Moved by the utterly unreasonable fact that the universe follows mathematical laws at all. That abstract symbol scribbled across a chalkboard by a human being can actually correspond to how reality operates at its most fundamental level. That correspondence, that mysterious, inexplicable, breathtaking correspondence, has never ceased to astonish me. And when I think about dying, not in the abstract, but in the concrete, about the fact that this particular collection of atoms that has been me for 70 years will one day return to the universe it came from, I don't feel dread. I feel something much closer to wonder, because those atoms don't vanish. They carry on. They'll become part of the soil, part of the ocean, part of the air someone breathes centuries from now. The information that has taken shape as this body and this mind will disperse, will spread, will in some sense become woven into everything else. Is that immortality? No, not in the conventional sense. But it is most certainly not nothing. It's a long, long way from nothing. And lying here in this hospital bed, watching the light slowly shift across these imperfect ceiling tiles, and feeling that strange, quiet loosening of the self that comes with illness, I find myself filled with gratitude. Overwhelming, unexpected, boundless gratitude. For all of it, every bewildering, beautiful, heartbreaking part of it. There's one more mystery I want to leave you with, one that has haunted me more than any other, and one that I think points to something important. Something neither science nor religion has yet fully explained. Why does mathematics work? I mean that as a genuine, pressing, deeply strange question, not as a rhetorical flourish. Mathematics is something human beings created, or perhaps discovered, entirely within our own minds. Pure mathematics, at its most abstract, has no necessary connection to the physical world at all. Mathematicians work away in quiet rooms, exploring the properties of imaginary objects governed by rules they've invented themselves, with no intention of describing reality. It's a game, the most elegant, demanding, and beautiful intellectual game ever devised, played for its own sake, with no eye toward practical use. And yet, here's the part that should genuinely stop you in your tracks. Physicists later come along, sometimes decades or even centuries later, and find that those very same mathematical structures describe the physical universe with uncanny, almost otherworldly precision. The complex numbers dreamed up as a pure abstraction turned out to be indispensable for quantum mechanics. The geometry Riemann developed out of sheer mathematical curiosity turned out to be exactly what's needed to describe curved space-time. The symmetry groups explored by pure mathematicians turn out to lie at the very heart of particle physics. This pattern has repeated itself again and again. Pure mathematics, invented without any thought of the physical world, ends up mirroring physical reality at its deepest levels. Why? Why should the universe be mathematical in the first place? Why should abstract ideas born inside human minds correspond so perfectly to particles, fields, and forces that existed billions of years before any mind ever appeared? This is no small puzzle, and no truly satisfying explanation for it exists. Unless, just as a possibility, not a conclusion, but a path worth considering, mind and universe are not nearly as separate as we usually assume. Unless consciousness and physical reality share some common, deeper origin that we haven't yet grasped. Unless, at the most fundamental level, understanding the universe is, in some sense, the universe coming to understand itself. I don't know if that's true, but I can't stop thinking about it. If there's one gift I could pass on from 70 years of living and thinking, it would be this. Fall in love with not knowing, not as a form of resignation or as a cloak for laziness, but as an active, joyful, disciplined practice of staying genuinely open to what reality might actually be, rather than rushing to settle for what you prefer it to be. The most dangerous thing a mind can do is to decide too soon. The most costly thing a person can do is trade wonder for comfort, exchanging a living, breathing question for a lifeless, fixed answer simply because that question is hard to carry. I've carried questions my entire life. Heavy ones. Questions about God, about meaning, about consciousness, about why there's anything at all. And I haven't answered them. But I'm here at the end telling you that carrying those questions, really carrying them without putting them down, has been one of the greatest privileges of my life. It has kept me awake. It has kept me honest. And in the deepest sense of the word, it has kept me alive. The universe doesn't owe us answers. It doesn't owe us anything at all. The sheer, improbable luck of existing in the first place, of getting to look around, to notice, to feel, to ask questions, is already so far beyond anything we could possibly deserve that it almost feels indecent to complain that answers weren't included along with it. Be curious. Be honest. Be willing to be wrong. Love questions far more than you love answers. And if you ever find yourself completely certain about life's biggest things, certain about God, certain about meaning, certain about reality's ultimate nature, treat that certainty as a gentle warning sign, because the universe is far stranger and far richer than any certainty can ever contain. They tell me I don't have much time left. Days, perhaps, maybe a week, if I'm stubborn enough about it. And I've always been a bit stubborn. I'm not afraid. I want you to know that. Not because I'm particularly brave, and certainly not because I've resolved all those questions. I haven't. In fact, I've just spent the last little while explaining why I'm perfectly comfortable with that. But because over these final weeks, something has quietly settled within me. A kind of calm I never quite had before. A willingness to simply be here, in this moment, in this body, in this modest room with its imperfect ceiling tiles, without needing any of it to be other than what it is. I have loved this universe. I want that stated clearly. I have loved it the way you love something you'll never fully understand, which is to say, wholeheartedly, without holding anything back. I have loved that it exists at all. I have loved that it contains mathematics and music, the migration of birds, and the unmistakable laughter of a child caught off guard by surprise. I have loved that it gave rise to consciousness, to beings who can turn their gaze to the stars, recognize they're made of that very same stardust, and feel something profound about that fact. Whatever I am, this fleeting arrangement of atoms, this temporary swirl of self-awareness moving through time, I'm returning to the source that gave me life, returning to the universe that shaped me, that was always shaping me, and that will continue creating other astonishing things long after this particular expression of astonishment has run its course. Is there something waiting on the other side? I honestly don't know, but for the first time in my life, not knowing doesn't feel like a shortcoming. It feels like the most honest, beautiful place I've ever had the privilege to stand. The universe was here long before me. It will be here long after me. And somehow, impossibly, gratefully, for a little while, I got to be a part of it. That is enough. That is more than enough.